Do you think you've already beaten Terminator 2D No Fate? Then let me give you the reality check. There is a specific something here that separates those who just reached the credits from those who actually finished the game. Because anyone can clear a stage by memorizing patterns, taking hits, and moving forward, but only true players can close it out the right way. So stay with me, because I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to be able to say without shame, now finally I've finished No Fate. I'm Mary, and the video is about to start. This ultra-rare speedrunner achievement is the kind of challenge that, in practice, becomes a test of total mastery. It's not enough to just finish arcade mode. You have to finish it racing against the clock with no margin to fix a bad stage later. In arcade mode, the idea is to be straight to the point, no cutscenes, and face a continuous run focused on execution. And the game itself sells the spirit of arcade immortality, high score, as the central objective of the mode. The detail that turns this into truly beating it for me is the combo of the time limit, under 15 minutes, with the Judgment Day difficulty. It's not just winning, it's winning at the limit, with a steady hand the entire time. What this challenge actually demands is that every stage becomes a choreography, perfect patterns, automatic decisions, and a mental route already mapped out before even pressing start. The game's combat experience, 8-way aiming, holding the aim button to anchor yourself for precision, and using slide and dodge to survive, means that any micro hesitation costs time. And here, time is the run's true HP. So my head goes into that straight line mode. I stop playing pretty and start playing efficient, choosing when it's worth clearing enemies and when it's worth just clearing a path, because the timer is unforgiving. There's a point many people underestimate. This trophy or achievement is described by people who analyze the game as something bordering on impossible without resorting to built-in cheats, precisely because the window is so tight that it forces you to ignore a lot and still execute perfectly. In other words, it's not just be fast, it's don't make mistakes that break your rhythm, because any death, any awkward repositioning, any broken chain turns into minutes that don't exist. It's the kind of challenge that makes you replay segments, not because you can't pass, but because you can't pass the right way, at the right time, with controlled risk. When a good run finally clicks, the feeling is very specific. It feels like the game changes genres for 15 minutes and becomes a precision sport, where you're just trying to keep the machine running without stuttering. The coolest part is that even being a stopwatch goal, it speaks to the game's own proposal of being a hardcore arcade experience, repeating, optimizing, and seeking peak performance. To me, that's where this challenge becomes the true ending. It's not just seeing credits, it's proving you understood the game to the point of making it obey your rhythm. No excuses, no errors, just execution. This S-rank challenge is the kind of thing that separates I finished the campaign from I mastered the game. The requirement is to complete an entire playthrough and get an S rank on every single level without letting one slip. The official description of the trophy makes it very clear. Complete a full run on any difficulty and achieve S rank in all levels. Since there are 15 stages in total, the psychological weight here is brutal. You can't make up for it later. One level below S, and the whole run loses its meaning. For me, the heart of this challenge isn't even the difficulty itself. It's the consistency. S rank usually means a high score, and that comes from killing fast, keeping the multiplier alive, and avoiding damage, because taking a hit drops your momentum and can even reset the multiplier depending on the score system. The cruel detail is that using a continue can kill your S chances for that stage, so the game pushes you toward safe, collapse-free execution. In practice, this challenge becomes a mental checklist per stage. Where to farm enemies without overexposing yourself, which segments have dangerous patterns for your chain, and which mini-bosses you want to melt with your best route to get that score jump. There's an irony I love, and hate at the same time. On easier difficulties, there might be fewer enemies, which can actually make the multiplier harder to raise, less room for error, fewer opportunities to score. When it finally works and you finish the run with S on everything, the feeling isn't I beat it, it's now I own this game. Because you didn't just survive the 15 stages, you did each of them in the most prestigious way the rank system demands. Max score, chains at the limit, and 0 damage without letting your heart rate take over at any point. That's why this overall S rank feels like an essential platinum. It forces you to play the arcade as a performance, not a stroll. This complete story very hard is the kind of challenge that for me becomes the seal of, okay, now I've really beaten Terminator 2D No Fate. No exaggeration. Finishing any route on Judgment Day, very hard, isn't about seeing endings. It's about proving you can maintain control when the game stops giving you breathing room. Enemies hitting harder, more punishing setups, and bosses that turn small mistakes into major defeats. What changes in your head when you enter this difficulty is that trading damage stops being an option. You start playing with a different discipline. Every advance must be intentional, every enemy must be handled with a simple and repeatable plan, and every resource, health, continues or checkpoints, ammo or weapons, becomes an asset. The cruelest part is that very hard doesn't just punish you for damage, it punishes you for the time you lose if you despair, because entering panic mode makes you miss more, take more hits, and reach the bosses without any structure. On the bosses, that's where this challenge truly becomes brutal. It feels like the game demands pattern reading and consistency. You don't win because you have reflexes. You win because you understand exactly when to attack, when to retreat, and when to accept that it's better to miss a damage window than to risk taking a hit. For me, the key is treating bosses like rhythm training, memorizing what comes after every animation, maintaining safe positioning, and not trying to optimize until the fight is 100% mastered. When you finally close a route on this difficulty, it gives you that good impression that you didn't just pass, you stayed whole until the end. To me, this challenge is the moment you stop playing it as an action game and start playing it as pure tension. The goal isn't to win the fight, it's to not let the game realize you exist. You enter Pescadero with the mindset of a stealth speedrunner, walking where there's the least visibility, picking a safe corner before moving the analog stick, and using silent melee only when it's 100% clean. Because any noise or misplaced body is that domino effect that ends in an alarm and, by your own rule, a restart. It's a stage that forces you to be patient, and that patience hurts more than any boss. The T-1000 part is the ultimate stressor. He's not an enemy to fight, he's a clock walking on the map. The right way to handle this is to think in routes and windows. You observe the pattern, cross in the interval, freeze when you need to, and accept losing a few seconds just to avoid risking the line of sight. The employees become walking traps because often the biggest mistake isn't touching them, it's rushing, missing the timing, and being seen by someone who didn't even seem important. When you manage to pass without alerting anyone, the feeling is very specific. It's as if you've unlocked a movie mode for the game, where the scene flows exactly how it should have happened in the film, but by your hand. This is the kind of challenge that makes you want to replay just to prove it wasn't luck, because it doesn't measure damage or DPS, it measures self-control and situational awareness. Man's Best Friend is one of those challenges that seems simple by name, but weighs on your soul. You need to finish any story mode route without killing any dogs. And this includes both the regular hounds and the robotic dogs from Cyberdyne and the Future War. The most interesting thing is that the trophy doesn't require a specific difficulty, so you can even try it on the easiest setting. But the challenge is purely about control and patience, because at certain points in the game, you simply can't avoid the dogs. You have to dodge them. In practice, this becomes a strategic exercise. You have to plan alternative routes, use dashes and timing to get through areas where dogs appear, and accept that if you kill one by accident, the entire run must be restarted from zero. It's no use just reloading a checkpoint. The game demands you maintain this rule until the end, so every decision becomes vital. The detail that earns my respect most is that the trophy counts all types of dogs, including robotic ones, so there are no technical excuses. You really have to respect the life of all of them. What makes this challenge so personal is how it changes the way you see the game. Instead of focusing on combat and efficiency, you start thinking about empathy and choice. It's as if the game forces you to reflect on what it means to be a ruthless hunter and, at the same time, show a little compassion, even if it's just for a trophy requirement. To me, this ends up making the experience more memorable because you finish the game not just as an exterminator, but as someone who, for some reason, chose to spare something they weren't forced to. When you finally close a route without killing any dogs, you get that feeling of, now I've truly beaten it, because it wasn't just about winning, it was about choosing not to win in a specific way. This trophy becomes a symbol of patience, self-control, and even a bit of humanity amidst the chaos of the Terminator future. This challenge of completing the boss rush without using a single pipe bomb is, for me, the moral platinum seal of Terminator 2D No Fate. You take the panic button out of the equation and are left with nothing but pattern reading, execution, and nerves of steel. The catch is that Boss Rush puts you through a sequence of bosses, including encounters with the T-1000 and machines like HKs, without that normal stage breathing room. So every mistake becomes a debt you carry into the next round. When you decide on 0 pipe bombs, you're basically saying, I'm not going to skip the fight. I'm going to win the hard way. In practice, what changes is your mental pace. Pipe bombs are usually that tool that shortens the fight, breaks a bad moment, or buys space when a boss corners you. Without them, consistency becomes the priority. Against the T-1000 especially, you can't play by ear. You have to identify the trigger for every attack, choose where to stay on screen so you don't get caught by range tricks, and hit little by little without rushing when he accelerates the chaos. Against HKs, the rule becomes survive first and deal damage later. Keep a safe distance, respect the windows, and accept that sometimes the best attack is not attacking for 2 seconds to avoid a silly hit. The moment this challenge becomes truly beating it is when you realize it doesn't just test reflexes, it tests discipline. You start playing as if every life were your last, because in Boss Rush, the sequence is the real enemy. Arriving at the end in one piece is worth more than winning a boss stylishly, but coming out broken for the next one. When the run clicks, the feeling is incredible because the victory has no asterisk. There was no explosive saving you from an error, no damage shortcut. It was you understanding the game at the level of timing and positioning that Boss Rush was designed to demand. This Terminator challenge, to me, is the cold-blooded certificate of Terminator 2D No Fate, because there are no shortcuts. It's 250 kills in infinite mode without dying, period. When the game promises you infinite, it also promises that at some point, a nasty combination of enemies, angles, and pressure will appear, and then the test becomes mental. You can't play pretty, you have to play safe long enough to reach the number. And that very rare tag reinforces exactly that. It's not that it's impossible, it's that it's easy to break concentration for 2 seconds and lose an entire run. The heart of the challenge is understanding that the real goal isn't to kill 250, it's to not die. So the strategy that works is always the one that reduces variance, staying in zones where you can control the screen, avoiding advancing unnecessarily, and treating every new spawn as a risk before it's a point. About the 100+ chains, I like to think of them as the turbo for progress. When you lock into a rhythm and stop taking silly hits, the game starts to flow and the count rises fast. But the danger is that a high chain also invites you to speed up too much. The secret is to maintain the same decision-making pattern at chain 120 as you did at chain 20. Prioritize clearing what threatens you first, retreat when things get tight, and never get stuck trying to confirm one more kill just to keep the momentum. There's a psychological shift here that I think is great for a script. The moment you stop getting excited about the score and start respecting the run as if it were a survival horror disguised as an arcade game, every 50 kills you feel like celebrating, and that's exactly where the run dies, because you let your guard down or try to show off. When you finally pass 250, the feeling isn't, wow, what a combo, it's, I made it through whole, as if you've tamed the infinite mode by force, and then you can say you've truly beaten the game because you proved consistency, reading, and discipline, not just damage. Mother of the Future is, for me, where Terminator 2D No Fate stops being just about replaying stages and becomes a sort of final exam of commitment to the game's timeline. It only appears after the path where Sarah kills Dyson, so it gives you that feeling of, okay, now you've crossed a door that won't close again. And from there, the game pushes you to face the consequences in an apocalyptic setting, like a playable post-credit scene that you actually have to earn. What makes this special is the atmosphere and the fantasy. Instead of being stuck just in the movie events, you go to the devastated future and play as Sarah. And, depending on the route, it might also highlight playing as John in the context of the war against the machines. Truly beating it here is precisely completing this mode. It feels like a mode built to test stage mastery, consistency, and decision-making under pressure, the kind of experience you don't finish on autopilot. In story mode, you survive. In Mother of the Future, you prove you belong in that world, because the game takes away the comfort of the guided narrative and throws you into the raw survival of the future. This A Crackin' Good Time challenge is, for me, the final proof that you've truly dived into the Terminator 2D universe. It requires you to complete the Mother of the Future mode, which only becomes available after following a specific path in the story, the moment Sarah kills Dyson. This already creates a different vibe because you aren't just repeating stages, you're exploring a branching narrative, like a what-if of the movie, and that completely changes the weight of every decision you make in the game. Playing as Sarah or John in this apocalypse scenario is what gives it that true ending feel. Sarah brings that hardened survivor vibe, fighting against everything to protect the future, while John puts you in the role of the resistance leader, facing Skynet and its machines on the battlefield. Mother of the Future mode is described as a time challenge, where every stage becomes a race against the clock, demanding absolute focus and mastery of the mechanics. And the coolest thing is that you feel like you're dealing with the consequences of choices made in the main story, as if the game were testing you beyond the obvious path. What makes this challenge special is that it's not just about skill, but about commitment to the complete experience of the game. You need to understand that alternative paths exist. You need to explore those routes, and only then can you access and complete this mode. When you finish Mother of the Future, it gives you the sense that you haven't just seen everything, you've proven you master the game on all its layers. And that's why this trophy is so rare and so valued by those who truly dedicate themselves to every detail of Terminator 2D, No Fate. This 100 chain challenge is that moment when the game asks you point blank if you can keep a cool head long enough to play clean. It's 100 kills in a row without taking damage, and that's it. The point isn't just killing a lot, it's killing without letting the game touch you even by accident. So every enemy becomes a mini test of discipline, positioning, and patience. And yes, infinite mode is usually the fairest place to try this, because you can get into a rhythm without depending so much on a specific section of a stage. For me, the big turning point is understanding that a chain is more about control than aggressiveness. You have to dictate the pace of the screen, not react too late. In Infinite, you can speed up the counter when you find a consistent mental route. Maintain distance, prioritize what reaches you fastest first, and avoid any greed of jumping into the middle of a group just to finish faster. If your chain died at 70 or 80, it almost never was due to a lack of damage. It was a second of relaxation, that just one more decision you make when you're already overconfident. What makes this challenge feel like truly beating it is that it forces you to play as if it were a miniature no-hit run. No trading damage, no surviving by a hair, no scraping by. When you finally lock in the 100 without taking a hit, the feeling is of total dominance, because you didn't beat a boss with half health and a continue. You beat the game on fundamentals, execution, screen control, and self-control.